most people get the first stage completely wrong, because they assume an avoidant reacts to silence the way an anxious person would, with immediate panic, immediate reaching out, immediate emotional collapse. But an avoidant nervous system is built differently. It is trained to survive by creating distance, by turning down intensity, by avoiding exposure, and by convincing itself that needing someone is dangerous. So when you finally go quiet, when you stop texting, stop asking, stop trying to fix it, stop explaining your pain, the first sensation that often rises in them is not missing you. It is relief. And I know how painful that sounds, because it can feel like your love meant nothing. But it is not proof that you were worthless. It is proof that the dynamic had become emotionally loaded for them. That closeness had started to feel like pressure. And that their defense system interprets your silence as the removal of demand, the removal of accountability, the removal of emotional intensity. Think about what an avoidant experiences when you are still present. Even if you are kind, even if you are respectful, even if you are only asking for clarity, the avoidant often hears, "I need you to show up," and inside their body that can translate to, "I'm about to be trapped. I'm about to be evaluated. I'm about to be exposed. I'm about to fail." So they cope by pulling back, by delaying replies, by minimizing, by staying vague, by acting like the relationship is not a big deal, not because they never cared, but because caring feels risky, and risk feels like loss of control. So when you silence them, their mind initially labels it as freedom, as quiet, as space, as a break from emotional responsibility. And in stage 1, the avoidance defenses celebrate. Because the part of them that avoids discomfort believes the problem has been removed, and they mistake the absence of confrontation for the absence of consequence. This is why stage 1 can look cold from the outside. They may seem fine. They may distract themselves. They may post online. They may go out. They may act unbothered. And if you see that, you might spiral into the most dangerous thought. They never cared. But what is often happening is that they are regulating. They are numbing. They are using movement and distraction to keep the deeper feelings from surfacing. Because if they slow down, if they get quiet, if they admit, "I might lose them," then the avoidant has to feel something they are not trained to hold: vulnerability, grief, remorse, fear. So they run toward relief, and relief becomes their mask. Here is the uncomfortable truth. In this first stage, they don't miss you as a person yet. They miss the pressure being gone. They miss the freedom from emotional conversations. They miss not having to explain themselves. They miss not having to repair, because repair requires humility, and humility requires emotional exposure, and exposure triggers their deepest fear. If you see the real me, you will reject me. So they protect themselves by acting like they don't need anyone, and your silence seems to confirm their story. See, I'm better off when things are quiet. But this stage is fragile, because it is built on an illusion. The illusion that you will come back the way you always did. The illusion that you are still emotionally available in the background. The illusion that silence is temporary. That you're only upset. That you'll break first. And that is why your silence has power. Because if you stay consistent, you do something new to their system. You introduce uncertainty, and uncertainty is the beginning of consequence, and consequence is what their avoidance cannot control. So if you are in that first stage, and you feel like you are being erased, remember this: stage 1 is not the final truth. It is the defense system speaking. It is their protective shell trying to convince them they are safe without you. And the moment they realize your silence is not a mood, but a boundary, the first stage collapses, and the second stage begins: the itch of curiosity, the crack in control, the uncomfortable question forming in their mind. What if they are really gone? After the first wave of relief, something begins to shift, not suddenly, not dramatically, but in small uncomfortable moments that sneak up on them, because stage 2 is where your silence stops feeling like space, and starts feeling like uncertainty. And uncertainty is the one thing an avoidant can't soothe with distance, because distance only works when they still believe they have access to you whenever they want it. And when you truly go quiet, you remove the invisible safety net they relied on without admitting it. The safety net of knowing you are still emotionally there, still reachable, still responsive, still available to be pulled back in when it suits them. This is the stage where their mind starts to itch, because the avoidant is often a master of managing intensity, but not a master of managing not knowing, and your silence creates a new question that won't stay quiet. Where are they? What are they doing? Why aren't they reacting? Why aren't they chasing? Why aren't they trying to fix this? And the avoidant may not call it missing you. They may not label it longing, because those words sound vulnerable, and vulnerability feels unsafe. So instead they label it curiosity, irritation, distraction, or even anger. But the truth underneath is simple. Your absence has created a gap, and the avoidant's nervous system is scanning that gap for information. In stage 2, they begin noticing all the places your energy used to live, not just in messages, but in the rhythm of their days, the way your presence made them feel wanted, without requiring them to fully show up. The way you stayed emotionally connected, even when they were emotionally inconsistent. The way you gave them the comfort of attachment without the responsibility of intimacy. And now that comfort is missing, so their mind begins to circle you like a satellite, quietly, obsessively, trying to locate where you went and what it means. This is where they check, not always openly, but subtly. They may check your social media, your last seen, your stories, your likes, your posts. They may look for signs, not because they are suddenly mature, but because they need certainty. They need to know if you are still within reach, and if they find nothing, if you're quiet everywhere, if you're not posting pain, not sending hints, not showing that you're waiting, then the uncertainty sharpens, because silence without explanation is powerful. It creates space where their imagination takes over, and imagination is where regret begins to grow. But stage 2 is also where the avoidance ego starts negotiating with reality, because they are used to a certain pattern. They pull away, you lean in, they go cold, you warm the room, they delay, you explain, and that cycle trains them to believe that even if they do nothing, you will keep the emotional connection alive. So when your silence breaks the pattern, their mind starts to run different stories. Maybe they're done. Maybe they finally realized. Maybe they met someone. Maybe they don't care anymore. And every story lands like a small threat to the identity they've been using to feel safe, the identity of being the one in control. This is where people misunderstand avoidance the most, because the avoidant may still look calm externally. They may still act busy, still act distant, still act unbothered. But internally there's a quiet restlessness, like something isn't resolved, like something is unfinished. And they don't like unfinished things, because unfinished means emotional exposure might be required. And that is exactly what they avoid, so they try to soothe themselves with logic. They tell themselves you're just emotional. You'll be back. It's not that deep. But then the silence continues, and their logic starts losing the argument. Stage 2 is the beginning of mental attachment. The part where they start thinking about you more than they admit, replaying small moments, rereading old conversations, remembering your tone, your patience, your consistency, and the more they think, the more they feel the uncomfortable truth rising, that your silence is not a tantrum, it is a boundary. And boundaries mean consequences. And consequences mean they could actually lose what they assumed would always be there. And that realization is what pushes them toward the next stage, the reach out, the breadcrumb, the test to see if they still have you. Stage 3 is where the avoidant stops pretending your silence doesn't matter and tries to touch the edge of your boundary without fully acknowledging it. Because by now the uncertainty is uncomfortable, The mental itching has turned into a need for confirmation, and confirmation is how they regain emotional control without having to expose themselves. So this is the stage where they often reach out, but not with the honesty you deserve, not with the vulnerability you've been waiting for, and not with the accountability that would actually heal anything. It's usually something small, casual, random, almost meaningless on the surface. A meme, a reaction to a story, a late-night check, in a neutral question that sounds polite. How are you? Hope you're good. And if you don't understand what this is, you will mistake it for regret. But stage 3 is not regret. Stage 3 is testing. An avoidant's first reach out after silence is often not an emotional confession. It is a probe, like tapping on a door to see if it still opens. And what they are really asking isn't, do you feel safe, or did I hurt you, or can we repair? What they are really asking is, do I still have access? Will you still respond? Are you still attached? Is the dynamic still available? Because if you respond the way you used to respond, with emotion, with explanation, with long paragraphs, with pain, with trying to fix it, you provide them the most addictive reassurance in the world. You prove to them that even when they give you crumbs, you will still feed them your full heart. This is why stage 3 can feel confusing, because it activates your hope. It makes you think, they're thinking about me. They miss me. They're coming back. And yes, sometimes they do miss you, but missing is not the same as change. And this stage is the most dangerous for you, because it's the stage where your nervous system wants relief too. You've been holding silence. You've been holding pain. You've been holding the urge to speak. So when they finally reach out, your body reacts like a thirsty person seeing water. And the avoidance system knows that, even if they don't consciously plan it, because patterns teach people what works. In stage 3, the avoidant often tries to pull you back into the old role without offering a new relationship. They want the comfort without the conversation. They want access without accountability. They want your warmth without the responsibility of holding you. And that's why their message is often light, vague, and low effort. Because low effort protects them. If you reject them, they can tell themselves, I didn't even try. If you respond warmly, they get the ego boost and the emotional safety. And if you respond angrily, they still get proof that they matter, because your emotion means they still live in you. Sometimes stage 3 escalates into indirect tactics. They may suddenly post more, look happier, act social, hint at moving on. Because it's not always about you. It's about control. If they can make you react, they can feel powerful again, and avoidants often confuse power with safety. They feel safest when they are the least emotionally exposed. So they test you to see if you'll chase, if you'll ask questions, if you'll demand clarity, if you'll show that you're still emotionally invested. And if you do, the avoidant gets what they came for. The internal pressure drops, the uncertainty disappears, and they often retreat again. Because now they know you're still there. But if you don't give them that old access, if you respond in a way that shows you are calm, grounded, and not hungry for their attention, or if you don't respond at all, something happens inside them. Because then the test fails, and when the test fails, the avoidant is forced to face a truth their defenses hate, that your silence is real, that you are not waiting, that you are not available in the same way, and that is what pushes them into the next stage, the stage where control turns into panic. Because the door they assumed would always open is no longer opening on command. Stage 4 is where the avoidance strategy stops working. Because distance can't soothe what your silence has created. And the moment they realize they cannot pull you back with a casual message, the moment they realize you are not reacting, not chasing, not arguing, not begging, not doing the emotional labor for them anymore, something cracks inside their system. Not always in a dramatic outward way, but internally, where they cannot hide from it. Because stage 4 is the stage of panic, And panic for an avoidant doesn't always look like tears and pleading. Sometimes it looks like anger. Sometimes it looks like arrogance. Sometimes it looks like coldness, but underneath all of it is the same raw fear. What if I actually lost them? Avoidants often live in a psychological loophole. They pull away, but they assume you remain. They retreat, but they assume the connection stays open. They act like the relationship is optional, but they assume your loyalty is permanent. And that loophole is what lets them avoid the pain of true loss, because true loss would force them to feel what they spend their whole life trying not to feel: dependency, vulnerability, regret, grief, and self-accountability. So when your silence becomes consistent and undeniable, when the old pattern no longer responds to their buttons, the loophole closes, and for the first time they are forced to face consequence. Not the consequence of you being upset, but the consequence of you being gone. This is the moment they start replaying, not in a romantic way at first, but in a restless way, like their mind is scanning for the moment the control slipped. When did they change? When did they stop? What did I do? And they may not admit, I hurt them, because that would create shame. But they begin to feel something that resembles dread, because dread is what happens when you realize your choices had a cost you can't reverse with a few words. And here is what makes stage 4 so intense. Their nervous system starts to wake up. The numbness begins to fail. Distractions don't satisfy the same way. The new people don't feel the same way. The busy life doesn't silence the truth, because the truth is now inside them, a hollow space where your emotional presence used to be. And this is where the regret begins to burn, because they start remembering your patience, your softness, the way you tried to reach them without attacking them, the way you explained what you needed, the way you gave them space but still stayed loving. And they see it differently now, not because they suddenly became enlightened, but because your absence has changed the value. And humans often understand value most clearly when access is removed. This is why your silence is not just ignoring. It is teaching, it is revealing. It is forcing emotional reality to enter a system that has been avoiding it. In stage 4, many avoidants start feeling emotionally flooded, and because they don't have healthy tools to process that flood, they may do what they always do. They may push it away. They may shut down. They may rationalize. They may tell themselves you were too much, too emotional, too demanding. They may rewrite the story to protect themselves, but the rewriting doesn't fully work anymore. Because if you were truly too much, their body wouldn't be reacting to your absence like this. If you were truly not important, they wouldn't feel this pull to check, to reach out, to restore the connection, to relieve the internal pressure, so their defenses fight harder. And this is why stage 4 can also bring sudden, unpredictable behavior. They may suddenly show up intense. They may send a longer message. They may act jealous. They may ask mutual friends about you. They may test again with stronger bait. They may even act offended that you're silent. Because offense can be a mask for panic. How dare you move on? Is often what a scared person says when they can't admit, I'm afraid you're gone. But here's the most important part. Stage 4 is where they begin to feel the weight of their own role in the loss. And that weight creates 2 possible paths. One is growth. One is escape, and many avoidants choose escape. They run toward a new distraction, a new situation, a new, fresh start. So they don't have to sit in the discomfort of repair, because repair requires humility, and humility feels like danger to them. Yet even if they escape, stage 4 leaves a mark, because once your silence forces a nervous system to face consequence, they don't forget it easily, and that is what pushes them toward the final stage, where they either attempt a real return, or they retreat into repetition. Stage 5 is where everything becomes painfully clear, not just for them, but for you. Because this stage isn't about a message. It isn't about whether they come back, and it isn't even about whether they miss you. It's the stage where reality settles in, and the nervous system accepts what the mind kept trying to deny. That your silence is not a protest, it is a decision. And when an avoidant finally feels that decision is real, they reach the crossroads. They either face themselves or they protect themselves. They either transform or they repeat, and what they do here reveals what your relationship truly meant to them. In stage 5, many avoidants experience a kind of emotional hangover. The distractions stop working. The story they told themselves starts collapsing, and they begin to recognize that the real loss isn't just you. It's the version of themselves that felt safe having you in the background, the version of themselves that could keep love at arm's length while still receiving the benefits. Because your silence removed more than your presence. It removed their ability to access comfort without commitment. And that's why this stage can trigger two very different behaviors that look similar on the surface, but are completely different underneath. The first behavior is the return, and it can look powerful. They might send a long message. They might sound emotional. They might apologize. They might say they've been thinking about you. They might say they didn't realize what they had. They might even cry. And if you've been starving for acknowledgement, your heart will want to believe it. But stage 5 demands that you become intelligent with your emotions. Because an avoidant can return for many reasons that have nothing to do with real change. They can return because they feel lonely, because they miss the validation, because they feel rejected and want to repair their ego, because they don't like losing, because their panic wants relief, because you were a stable emotional home they didn't fully value until it was gone. And none of those reasons guarantee a new pattern. They only guarantee a new moment. So stage 5 asks you to stop being hypnotized by words and start watching for evidence. Because changed behavior has fingerprints. It shows up as consistency, as clarity, as steady effort, as follow through without you begging. It shows up as emotional responsibility, not just emotional expression. And the difference is everything. Emotional expression is, I miss you. Emotional responsibility is, I understand what I did. I can name it. I can own it. I can talk about it. And I am willing to do the work to build trust again. Because love without responsibility is just craving, and craving fades the moment comfort returns. The second behavior in stage 5 is the escape. And this is where avoidants protect themselves by rewriting the entire story. They tell themselves you were too much. They tell themselves it wasn't real. They tell themselves they don't need anyone. They jump into something new. They act like you never mattered. And this can feel like the ultimate insult. But it's often a defense against shame, because shame is unbearable to them. Shame means, I failed. Shame means, I hurt someone who loved me. Shame means, I was the reason something good ended. And rather than sit in that, they run. They detach harder, they numb harder, they replace harder. Because replacing is easier than repairing. And the avoidant nervous system will always choose the path that reduces emotional exposure, unless growth is forced by real self-awareness. But here's the part that gives you your power back. Stage 5 is not the stage where you wait for their decision. It's the stage where you finalize yours. Because once you understand these stages, you stop romanticizing their silence. You stop obsessing over their psychology. You stop giving their confusion the authority to define your worth. And you start seeing the truth, that someone can feel something for you and still be incapable of loving you in a safe way. Someone can miss you and still not be ready to meet you. Someone can regret losing you and still repeat the same pattern the moment they feel secure again. So stage 5 is where you graduate emotionally. You stop asking, do they regret it? And you start asking, do I respect myself enough to never beg for love again? You stop asking, will they come back? And you start asking, if they come back unchanged, will I be strong enough to say no? Because the ultimate win is not them returning. The ultimate win is you becoming the kind of person who cannot be controlled by inconsistency, who cannot be manipulated by breadcrumbs, who cannot be softened into self-abandonment, just because someone finally noticed your absence. And this is why your silence is sacred, because it doesn't just reveal them, it restores you. It teaches your nervous system that peace is possible without chasing. It teaches your heart that love should not feel like waiting. And it teaches your mind that closure isn't something they give you. It's something you choose the moment you decide you will never again accept a love that costs you your dignity.